Welcome to Whisper's Secrets, where the most intimate mysteries come to life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell so you never miss a secret. Now, let's pull back the veil. The night Chloe said it was? Just one night. Was the night I buried the version of me who believed in love without conditions. Not because the betrayal itself was louder than others I've heard of, but because of the way she said it, like I was being unreasonable for bleeding. She sat across from me in our kitchen, elbows on the table, her fingers gently tapping the base of her wine glass like she was trying to count the seconds I'd hold her gaze. Her voice wasn't shaky. There was no begging, no tears. Just that soft, insistent calm of someone who'd already justified their actions in their head. "I need you not to make this a tragedy," she said. Her words floated over the low hum of the refrigerator and landed like frostbite. Just one night. One night with another man. Don't make it a tragedy. It's hard to describe the sensation of having your reality turned inside out in real time. It's not an explosion. It's slower. Like watching your reflection in a mirror begin to crack, piece by piece, until the thing looking back at you isn't familiar anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my chair. I sat very still and said nothing, because everything inside me was louder than anything I could have spoken out loud. She exhaled through her nose, eyes moving down to her lap. "You're not saying anything. That's because I haven't figured out which part hurts the most yet." She blinked. "It didn't mean. Don't say it didn't mean anything," I said, cutting her off without raising my voice. "It meant something the moment you said yes." She flinched. It had been 5 weeks until the wedding. 5 weeks until the handwritten vows, the playlist we built over 3 years, the vows we'd drafted on separate notepads one rainy weekend with tea and candles and her humming through the lyrics of our first dance song. Now they sat in the drawer upstairs, next to the wedding bands I picked out alone. I stood up. She didn't stop me. I packed a bag. Not because I didn't belong in that house, but because I needed distance from the version of myself who didn't see it coming. The first place I went was Marcus's. He was my oldest friend. Not in years, but in proof. The kind of friend who had shown up at 2 a.m. when my car broke down in the snow and refused to let me apologize for waking him. I knocked. He opened the door in sweatpants and blinked once. Then stepped aside. No questions. He handed me a beer before I sat down. I didn't drink it. "I left," I said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah?" She said it was just one night. He looked at me for a long time, then leaned back and said, "They always say that when they're trying to minimize the bomb they just set off in your ribs." I didn't reply. I just stared at the glass in my hand like it had answers. We didn't speak much that night. Just sat there while the TV played a muted movie either of us watched. And somehow, the silence said more than anything I could have voiced. The next morning, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Micah Torres. Former client. Now a private investigator. Quiet, thorough, with a reputation for results. When I explained the situation, he didn't react with pity or shock. Just asked the right questions. "I don't need dirt," I told him. "I need truth. I want to know if it really was one night. Or if I've been sleeping beside a stranger this whole time." "I'll find out," he said. "Give me a week." A few days later, I went back to the house. Chloe was there, sitting on the porch like it was any other Tuesday, like the world hadn't shifted 6 inches to the left and torn itself in half. She stood when she saw me. "I didn't expect you to come back so soon," she said. "I didn't come back," I replied. "I came for my tools." She blinked. "Your what?" "My tools. Garage. I built that entire shelving unit with those hands. I'm not leaving them here so someone else can use them to hang up curtains you don't deserve." Something flickered in her eyes. But she stepped aside. "I thought you'd want to talk." "I don't," I said. "But You already spoke," I said. "With your body. With your choices. With your silence before and your excuses after. We're done talking." I walked past her. In the garage, I packed everything. Every hammer, every drill, every screw neatly placed into the old metal case I'd inherited from my grandfather. The weight of it in my hand felt like reclaiming a part of myself. On my way out, I looked back only once. Not at her. At the window upstairs. The one we planned to install shutters on after the honeymoon. Let someone else deal with that now. Micah called 2 days early. Got something, he said. You sure you want to hear it? I didn't hire you to protect my feelings. He exhaled. It wasn't just one night. I closed my eyes. She and your brother have been in contact for over 2 months. Texts. Late-night calls. She met him 4 times at a hotel 20 minutes outside the city. Room 206. Always the same. I didn't speak. There's more, he said. Of course there is. Your mother knew. I opened my eyes. What? Your mother was in the loop. Not directly involved, maybe, but she sent Chloe messages after the first hotel visit. Said she understood and hoped Chloe could finally feel alive again. I sank into a chair. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. Her name is Lena Mercer. My mother. The kind of woman who could cut you open with a compliment and make you feel grateful for the bleeding. Her love was a ledger, every favor owed interest, every affection a loan. She never liked simplicity. Or people who couldn't be controlled. She said Chloe had spark. That I was. Lucky to land a girl like that. But every praise was a setup. Every smile a mask. You should have married someone more like Caleb, she once said. Caleb. My younger brother. The man she treated like the second coming of charisma. Muscles, fake tan, and a business built on selling fitness inspiration to insecure people online. If I was stability, he was spectacle. And spectacle was what our mother loved. I ended the call with Micah. And I sat there in silence, letting the last of my illusions fall apart like ash in my hands. They didn't just betray me. They conspired. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop and made a list. Not of people to destroy, but of truths to reveal. And when I was done, I titled the document, Reclamation. Because this time, I wasn't just walking away. I was walking through. The morning after I made the list, I didn't feel like a man taking back control of his life. I felt like a ghost, wandering through my own home, trying to remember where I left the last remnants of the person I used to be. It wasn't just Chloe who'd betrayed me. It wasn't just Caleb. It wasn't even just my mother, who had always taken such pleasure in my quiet steadiness, using it as a pedestal to push her golden boy higher. The betrayal was broader than that. It was the lie they'd all whispered to me, the narrative they wove together in their minds that I wasn't enough, that I was only good when I could be used to build their version of success, their version of family. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to let them win this one. I wasn't going to be another casualty in their game. So I planned. Not for revenge, but for truth. Not for vengeance, but for clarity. I started with Caleb. His life, despite all the bravado and protein shakes, was built on sand. He had this influencer business, a supplement brand that sold overpriced powders to people who wanted muscles without the effort. I'd always known it was a little shady, but I never looked too closely. Until now. Micah had dug up everything. He sent me a neatly organized packet, bank statements, receipts, purchase orders for bulk items that were never delivered, tax evasion red flags, complaints from former clients about shipments that were never sent. Caleb's entire operation was a house of cards, held together by half-truths and charm. I wasn't doing this to destroy him, not really. I was doing it because he needed to understand the truth. And maybe, just maybe, I needed to watch him squirm. So, I did what any rational person in my position would do. I let the world know. I sent an anonymous tip to the local business licensing office, the Consumer Protection Bureau, and a few influencers who were popular in the fitness community. I wasn't going to let him hide behind a flashy Instagram account anymore. If he was going to exploit people, he needed to face the consequences. I knew the impact would be fast. Caleb had no idea how close his fraud was to being uncovered. But it wasn't just Caleb I needed to deal with. It was also my mother. Lena Mercer had spent my entire life weaving webs of influence, manipulating relationships like they were threads in some grand tapestry only she could see. The worst part was, I hadn't even realized how deeply embedded she was in every corner of my life, until Chloe came into the picture. I thought Chloe and I had a strong foundation, built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and yes, a little bit of that idealism that comes with being in your late 20s, planning a future together. But I had never seen the cracks in Chloe's own foundation, the foundation that had been shaped, in part, by the very same woman who had taught me to question everything I thought I knew about loyalty. Chloe wasn't the woman I thought she was. She wasn't the innocent partner caught in a lie. She was a woman who, when faced with discomfort, had chosen the one thing she thought would finally make her feel alive. And she chose Caleb, my brother. And my mother? She had nudged her into it. I spent a sleepless night replaying conversations, revisiting moments I'd dismissed as unimportant. My mother had been a ghost in our relationship long before I knew it. A subtle influence. A whisper in Chloe's ear. I couldn't let it slide. I couldn't let her get away with orchestrating this charade. So I took action. I called in a favor from an old acquaintance, a lawyer from a firm I'd worked with once. I told him I needed something small to start. Nothing too drastic. Just a way to ensure Lena couldn't use her charm to manipulate anyone else. I wanted to be able to tell her, in person, that I was done with her games. The lawyer gave me exactly what I needed, a list of properties under her name that she had never fully disclosed. Off-market deals. Hidden properties. Accounts where she'd funneled money to keep up appearances. It wasn't illegal, but it was far from ethical. I didn't want to ruin her financially. I wanted to expose her, make her realize that her games had consequences. So, I contacted a journalist I knew from a story I'd worked on last year, someone with the credibility and reach to make sure Lena's carefully curated reputation would be stripped away. I fed her the information, completely anonymously. Within days, the first article hit: Lena Mercer, the real estate queen who might be hiding more than just secrets. The fallout was immediate. It wasn't a scandal yet. But it was close. Lena's phone was blowing up. Her real estate clients were starting to ask questions. A few deals she'd been working on fell through. A couple of investors even called in to ask why they hadn't been notified of some of the hidden accounts she'd been keeping off the books. I didn't feel sorry for her. I didn't feel anything at all. But I was finally in control. Then came the hard part. I still hadn't talked to Chloe. I didn't want to call her. I didn't want to text her. And I certainly didn't want to see her again, especially not after everything that had come to light. But I had to. I knew I had to face her before this all ended. I couldn't let it be like this, me sitting in the wreckage while she took the easy way out. So I called her. She picked up on the first ring. "Jude," she said, her voice small, almost timid. "I didn't think you'd." "You didn't think I'd what?" I cut in. "I didn't think you'd call me. I thought you'd hate me forever." "I don't hate you, Chloe," I said. "I just don't know who you are anymore." She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing. I could feel her trying to find the right words. "I was confused," she said finally. "I was lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was in love with him, but now I see how messed up everything was. How much I lied to you. How much I lied to myself." I waited, letting her talk. She had to get it out. She had to explain herself, even if I didn't want to hear it. "I can't undo it, Jude. I don't think I ever can. I don't even know if we can go back to how things were. I don't think you can forgive me." I paused before answering. "No. I can't forgive you, Chloe. Not for what you did to me. Not for what you let my mother do to us. But I'm not going to keep fighting it. I don't want to be angry anymore." She let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. So sorry. Goodbye, Chloe." I hung up the phone before she could say anything more. I spent the next few days reorganizing everything: papers, accounts, bills. I was cleaning house in more ways than one. I wanted nothing left to remind me of her. Then, after I'd cleared everything out, I sat in the living room, in the silence, and just let it sink in. I was free. In the following weeks, I made contact with the people I'd been avoiding, my old friends, the ones who never knew the whole story. I took walks in the evenings, by myself, no distractions. I got used to being alone again, but not in the empty way I once feared. This time, it felt like freedom. I didn't feel bad about the way things ended with Chloe. She had made her choices. She had betrayed me, not just once, but many times. She had ignored the lines I drew in the sand. And now, those lines had shifted, and I stood on the other side of them, finally realizing that I didn't need her to feel whole again. And Caleb? He never got back up. His world crumbled slowly, piece by piece, and no matter how much he tried to fight, no matter how much he tried to shine his social media profile and pretend everything was fine, the world had already seen who he truly was. Lena? She stayed quiet. I didn't expect her to change, and she didn't. But her empire of lies began to erode, one small public scandal at a time. People were starting to see her for what she truly was, a puppet master who thought she could manipulate everything and everyone around her. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. But then again, it wasn't supposed to be. The truth was, I wasn't looking for forgiveness. I wasn't looking for redemption. I was looking for something quieter, something that couldn't be taken from me. And I found it in the end. The week after the phone call with Chloe, I spent more time in my own mind than I had in years. The house felt different, quieter, but in a way that wasn't oppressive. It was the absence of clutter, of noise, of half-formed apologies lingering like ghosts in every corner. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I wasn't keeping a mental tally of mistakes, lies, or what-ifs. I simply existed. And that was enough. I focused on the things I could control. Work. Painting. My health. I went for runs again, in the mornings, before the city had even woken up. I spent more time in the gym, not for show, but because it felt good to feel my body move. No one was watching. No one was waiting for me to be something else. It was the first real peace I'd known in months. But peace isn't permanent. It doesn't stay still for long, and sooner or later, life comes knocking again, reminding you that silence doesn't last forever. It started with the letter. Not from Chloe. Not from Caleb. This one came from the lawyer who was handling the final paperwork for the divorce. He had a name I didn't recognize, but the address on the envelope was unmistakable. A divorce settlement couldn't be the next chapter, could it? There was still so much I hadn't processed. I opened the letter slowly. It was formal and personal. But then I read the final line. Please note, there is an outstanding claim regarding the distribution of assets between you and Mrs. Wren. This includes, but is not limited to, your joint investments, real estate holdings, and the shared income account. It felt like my stomach dropped into the floor. I had already given everything to her, the ring, the home we'd bought together, the future we'd planned. But this claim? This felt like one last silent weapon. A final twist. I didn't waste time. I called the lawyer immediately. The conversation was short and to the point. My lawyer had already responded. I wasn't worried about the assets. It was just another part of the aftermath. But something about the timing felt intentional. Chloe hadn't even asked for more. She didn't need to. The final decision had been made long before the papers were signed. I sat there for a while, staring at the phone, trying to let the weight of it sink in. The truth had been spoken, and it was now in the hands of lawyers. But I knew it wasn't just about money. It was about power. It was about taking something from me that wasn't hers to claim. I shook my head, trying to clear the thought before it grew too big. I wouldn't be that man again. Not anymore. The days after the letter came were a blur of work and waiting. But not the anxious kind of waiting, the kind that rots your bones. It was the waiting that comes when you've already accepted what's coming and no longer fear the storm. I was in the garage, working on another canvas, when my phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. "You free tonight? Got something for you." I cleaned my hands, wiped the paint from my fingers, and shot him a text back. "Sure. What's up? I'll fill you in. It's about your brother." That was enough to make my heart drop. I hadn't heard from Caleb in weeks. Not even a text. Not that I expected one. But the fact that Marcus was reaching out about him meant something had changed. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that kind of change. I met Marcus at the same pub we'd sat at the week before, but this time, the air was different. There was no laughter. No lightness. We sat across from each other in silence for a long moment before he spoke. "I've been trying to get a hold of you about Caleb," Marcus said quietly, the words almost reluctant, like he wasn't sure how much I needed to know. I leaned back in my chair. "What's going on?" "He's been digging himself deeper into the whole man," Marcus said, his voice tight. "The whole supplement thing? It's a bigger mess than we thought." "What do you mean?" "Caleb's not just avoiding taxes. He's been getting involved with people he shouldn't be. I don't know the details, but the whispers are there. Money laundering. Fake distributors. It's bad, Jude." My stomach tightened. "And you're telling me this now because it's not just his business anymore. He's dragged other people into it. Big players. Dangerous people. And your mom, she's been in the loop." I stared at him, letting his words settle in. "How involved is she?" "She's always been involved, man. You know that. But this is more than just throwing praise at Caleb and making him feel like he's untouchable. She's got her hands in the mix, too. She's been helping him run things under the table. Real estate. Money transfers. All of it." "Mom?" I repeated, the disbelief sharp in my chest. Marcus nodded. "She's not the woman you think she is, Jude. And Caleb? He's got more people watching him now. People who don't give second chances." I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process everything. "So what do you want me to do with this?" "I don't know, man," Marcus said, shaking his head. "But if you don't get involved, it's only going to get worse. For you. For Chloe. For everyone." I sat there, letting the weight of Marcus's words press down on me. The old version of me would have tried to fix it. Would have tried to save Caleb, or at least protect him from the consequences of his own greed. But I wasn't that man anymore. I couldn't be. "Do you have proof?" I asked. "Enough to bury him," Marcus said grimly. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The decision had already been made. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, texts, and meetings. I met with Micah again, this time in person, to discuss the next step. He'd gathered everything I needed to know: Caleb's accounts, his fake addresses, the shady deals he'd been making under the radar. He'd even found an old connection to a bigger player who had been funding Caleb's supplement empire in exchange for quiet services. It was clear now. Caleb had crossed lines he couldn't uncross. And that was the moment I knew what I had to do. The confrontation with Caleb didn't happen right away. I didn't storm into his gym or confront him in the street. I waited. I watched. I let him think he could keep his world intact. But when the time came, I did what I had to do. I showed up at his house unannounced late one night. He didn't seem surprised to see me, just irritated. "What do you want, Jude?" "I'm not here to talk about the past," I said, stepping into his living room. "I'm here to talk about the future. Yours. And mine." He frowned. "You've been going around, talking to people behind my back. I don't like that." "I don't care what you like," I said, my voice steady. "I know everything. The business, the lies, the fake distribution. Your money trail. I know who you've been working with." He took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can take me down?" "I don't think I can." "I know I can." There was a long pause. Then Caleb sneered. You're weak, Jude. You've always been weak. You've always tried to play it safe, and look where it's gotten you. I didn't flinch. Yeah, I said quietly. It's gotten me far enough to see through your lies. He lunged at me then. Not physically, no, he was too smart for that. Instead, he tried to play the victim. To spin a narrative that I was the one attacking him. He brought up the past. He brought up Chloe. He tried everything to make me feel like the bad guy. But I wasn't playing his game anymore. I stood up. I'm not here for your games, Caleb. I'm here to end them. I turned and walked out without another word. The next day, I went to the bank. I made sure every cent of Caleb's money, every asset he thought he controlled, was frozen. I contacted the authorities and handed over everything I knew about his fraudulent business dealings. It wasn't personal. It was just business. And Caleb? He had a long fall ahead of him. The silence after the storm is always the hardest. When everything is quiet, you begin to notice the gaps, those places where the noise used to be. In the aftermath of Caleb's fall, I tried to focus on the silence. It wasn't peace. It wasn't relief. It was just absence. It was the calm after chaos, the breath you take before you remember to exhale. I didn't think about Chloe anymore. I didn't need to. She had made her choice. The life she wanted was with Caleb, and I had nothing left to offer her but the coldness of truth. But Caleb? He wasn't finished. A few weeks after I froze his assets and handed over the evidence of his fraudulent dealings, I received a call. It was late, just after dinner. I had just finished unpacking the last of my things in my new apartment, one I'd bought with no intention of making it a home just yet, but simply somewhere to breathe. I picked up the phone without checking the caller ID. Jude, Caleb's voice came through, low and sharp. We need to talk. I stood up, pacing the small living room. About what? About you ruining my life. He spat. Your life? Caleb, your life was built on lies. I didn't ruin it. You did that all on your own. I had everything, he said, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. I had the business. I had the image. I had the clients. And you. He paused, exhaling sharply, like the weight of the truth was just sinking in. You tore it all down. You took it from me. No, Caleb. You gave it away. You gave it to the people who would use you up and spit you out. You trusted the wrong people. That's where you're wrong, Jude, he said, his tone darkening. I'm not the one who lost. I'm not the one who's walking away empty-handed. You think this is over? I gripped the phone tighter. You're done, Caleb. The authorities are already looking into you. Your business is gone. Your reputation? Gone. I could almost hear his smile through the phone. You think you're done with me? You think this is over just because you took everything I built? You don't know who I'm connected to. You have no idea what's coming next. I exhaled slowly, leaning against the wall. You're nothing. You're just a fraud. And everyone you've lied to is going to find out. I'm going to make sure of that. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Caleb spoke, his voice almost cold now, like he had resigned himself to something. I'll see you soon, Jude. Don't think for a second you're walking away unscathed. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. I hung up. The next morning, I went to see Marcus. I think he's done, I said when I walked into his apartment. But he keeps threatening something. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm not going to wait around to find out. Marcus looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. You're right. He's not done. Caleb doesn't know how to quit. He's always been the guy who drags people into his mess. I'm not going to wait for him to strike, I said, sitting down at his kitchen table. I want to hit him first. I need to make sure he's done. Completely. Marcus didn't hesitate. I've got people. I know a few guys who can make sure this doesn't escalate. But you have to be careful, Jude. Once you start playing this game, there's no backing out. I looked him in the eye. I'm not backing down. He made this personal the second he involved my family. Now it's my turn. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, messages, and quiet planning. I contacted Micah again, giving him a list of Caleb's connections and the people I needed him to track down. His investigation had already uncovered Caleb's illegal activities, but now it was time to tighten the noose. While Caleb was busy trying to salvage what was left of his business, I focused on something else. His personal life. I knew he'd been reckless, too reckless, and it was only a matter of time before someone from his past would come forward. I had to make sure that time came sooner rather than later. It wasn't until the end of the week that I finally got the call I'd been waiting for. Micah's voice was calm but urgent. "You were right," he said. "Caleb's been skimming money from multiple clients. But there's more. There's an old client of his who's been threatening to sue over a failed investment. And get this, he's got an associate who's been following Caleb for months. Someone who's been collecting dirt on him for years." I listened, heart pounding. "Who is it?" "Someone you know. Someone you wouldn't expect. It's your mother." I froze. "What?" "Lena Mercer. She's been in the background of every shady deal Caleb's ever made. She's been keeping track of every move he's made for years." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why would she do that?" "Power," Micah said simply. "Lena always wants control. And she's always been willing to use her own son to get it." I didn't go home that night. Instead, I went to Lena's. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I had the key to the house, the one she never took back after I moved out years ago. I let myself in, the familiar silence of the house swallowing me whole. It was too clean. Too quiet. Too sterile. Lena was sitting in her favorite chair, as if she was waiting for me. "Jude," she said, not surprised, not even startled. "I knew you'd come eventually." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at her. She was calm, composed, like she was always in control. But I could see it now, how she'd played every side of this game. She didn't care who got hurt, as long as she stayed on top. "You think you're better than me," she said, her voice soft but cutting. "But you're just like me. We both manipulate. We both use people to get what we want. You just don't like the way I do it." I clenched my fists at my sides. "You used me, Lena. You used Caleb. And you used Chloe. All to get what you wanted. And now you're going to lose it all." She tilted her head, studying me with an unsettling calmness. "You think I haven't already lost it all? You think this is new for me, Jude?" I stepped forward, feeling the weight of everything finally pressing down on me. "This is different, Lena. This time, it's not about saving anyone. This time, it's about making sure you don't get away with it." She didn't flinch. "You can't stop me," she said, her voice low. "You can't stop me any more than you could stop your brother." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The days that followed were a blur of legal action, calls to the authorities, and Micah working behind the scenes to make sure Caleb's empire crumbled in real time. It wasn't fast. It wasn't easy. But it was thorough. And in the end, it was effective. By the time the first legal notices started arriving, Caleb's gym was closed. His supplement business had collapsed. And Lena? Her real estate empire had been shattered, her influence gutted by her own greed. She had nowhere to go but down. I didn't feel victorious. Not at first. It was just the end of a chapter. But as the dust settled, I realized something. I had taken back my life. I had taken back my peace. And for the first time in years, I was living on my terms. The final steps are always the hardest. I had spent the last few months reassembling the pieces of my life, trying to fit them into a version of myself that didn't depend on Chloe, or Caleb, or Lena. But the last step was different. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about leaving it behind completely. It was about taking that one final breath before stepping into the future, and finally feeling like I was truly free. It came in the form of a letter. Another one. Not from Chloe. Not from Caleb. This time, it was from Lena. I didn't open it immediately. I knew the content before even reading the words. She had always been a manipulator, always trying to pull strings, always trying to worm her way into my life when I least expected it. And she was doing it again, in her own twisted way. The letter was short, direct, and like everything else she ever sent, calculated. Jude, I know I've hurt you. I know I've made mistakes. But I also know you. You'll never forgive me. That's not something I expect. But I need you to understand something I should have told you years ago. I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to protect you. From the truth. And now I realize I've protected you from the wrong things. You've made your choice. I've made mine. Don't hate me. Lena. I read it once. Twice. I set it down without another thought. There was no more room in my life for her manipulations. No more room for any of it. That afternoon, I decided it was time to go through the final motions. I walked through the house one last time. The house that had once been our home, the place where I had spent endless hours trying to build something that would last. The walls were still familiar, but they felt smaller now, emptier, like they had once cradled dreams and now only held the remnants of them. I packed up the last of Chloe's things, the books, the shoes, the trinkets she had once kept around the house like they mattered more than the love we built. I didn't feel the anger anymore. I didn't feel the sting. I felt calm. The closure I was looking for wasn't in what Chloe had taken, or what Caleb had stolen. It was in the things they left behind, the empty spaces, the unanswered questions, the silence. I walked upstairs and paused in front of the room we had once shared. The door was still there. The bed. The dresser. But it was all different now. Everything was different. I turned off the light, closed the door behind me, and walked downstairs. The next morning, I made the final call. I called my lawyer and instructed him to finalize the divorce. Everything was in motion now. The paperwork was ready. The money was sorted. The house was legally mine. I would have nothing more to do with Chloe, with Caleb, or with Lena. They were ghosts now. Remnants of a past that would never come back. And the best thing I could do was move forward. I didn't see Marcus for a few days. I knew he was busy with his own life, and I didn't want to burden him. But when I did see him again, it was different. There was no bitterness, no tension. Just a quiet understanding between us. You did it, didn't you? He asked one afternoon as we sat in the backyard of my new place, sipping beers. I did, I replied. It's over. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of it all settling in the air around us. Then Marcus broke the silence. You're going to be okay, right? I smiled at him, but it wasn't a sad smile. It wasn't the smile of someone who had been broken. It was the smile of someone who had finally been made whole. I'm more than okay, I said. I'm free. A week later, I packed my bags again. Not for the final time, but for the first time in a long time, I packed for myself. Not for anyone else. Not for Chloe, or Caleb, or Lena. I was going to visit some friends in the city. I was going to take time to breathe, to be alone without the weight of everything else dragging me down. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was going to live for me. The morning I left, I took one last look at the house. I didn't look back. I didn't feel the need to. There was no more holding on to what wasn't mine. No more hoping for a future with someone who didn't see me for who I was. No more pretending that the past was something that could be rewritten. It was over. I drove out of town, the road stretching ahead like a promise. And as the miles passed, I felt the weight of everything I had lost shift into something else. Not regret. Not anger. Just space. Space to breathe. Space to grow. Space to be free. The city greeted me with its usual hum. Cars whizzing by, people laughing and chatting on sidewalks, the air thick with possibilities. I checked into my hotel, unpacked, and took a deep breath. The world was big here. The possibilities were endless. And for the first time in so long, I felt like I was on the edge of something new. That night, I met up with Kira. She was sitting in a small cafe by the river, her fingers wrapped around a cup of tea, her smile warm and open. "You look different," she said as I sat down across from her. "Like you finally found the right rhythm." I smiled. "I think I have." We talked for hours. About everything and nothing. About the future. About art. About what it means to be free. And when we parted, she gave me a hug, a real, genuine hug. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "I'm glad you're finally here." The next few weeks were a blur of small victories. I started a new project. A small development that gave me a sense of purpose again. Not the same purpose I had before, not the one I thought was supposed to define me, but a new one. A purpose I chose for myself. I started painting again. Not for anyone else. Not for recognition. But for myself. And I began to feel the weight lift bit by bit. One evening, just as the sun was setting, I received a message. It was from Chloe. "I just want to say I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed to tell you that I was wrong. I wasn't the person you thought I was. I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen. I didn't reply. Because it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't who I was before. I wasn't that man who had clung to a broken dream. I was someone else now. Someone who had built his life with his own hands. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. That night, I walked outside into the cool evening air. The world was quiet, peaceful, like it was finally ready to let me in. And I realized something then. I wasn't just moving on. I was finally living. Thank you for being with us on Whisper's Secrets. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. The secrets are waiting to be revealed. See you soon.